Motherhood, feminine energy, returning to nature. These are words that mean very different things to different women. And today, we're going there. But before we begin today's conversation, I want to ground us into something I talk about often here at the Manage Her. So many women have been taught to lead like a ladder, to push harder, to move faster, and measure their worth by how much they carry. But what I've learned through motherhood, through business, through life from the inside out is that real leadership often looks more like a garden. It's cyclical, it's intuitive, and sometimes the most powerful growth happens when we return to the parts of ourselves we were told to outgrow. Today's guest, Chelsea Ann, explores the idea through a deeply spiritual and feminine lens. She's an author of 5 books centered around motherhood, energy, and what she describes as returning women to their nature, inviting us to examine the wounds, stories, and identities that shape how we show up in the world. Now, as always on this podcast, this space is not about telling women who to be. It's about expanding the conversation, holding nuance, curiosity, and respect for the paths that many women walk. Because whether you lead a company, a home, or a community, or simply your own healing, your inner world is part of your leadership. Chelsea, welcome to the Manager Podcast. It's so nice to have you here.
Oh, it's so nice to have you. I have to say, right when you started, the window randomly opened. The energy just like filled the room. And I was like, oh no, right now. And it's closed and it just opened itself. So it's going to be a really powerful podcast. And thanks for having me.
I'm
And
happy you're
it's a
here.
beautiful intro.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited. There's so much crossover in our work and our curiosity about the human experience. I feel like we both
Yeah.
have such a curious approach to our stories, to our wounds, and all of these things. And it was like right away we had this thing when we talked for the first time. It was like we had I've known you forever. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, it felt like that too for me. And I haven't felt that a long time unless it's like a soul family member. So that's really nice.
Thank you.
The window closed. Okay. It's confirming us. I love that. And I feel like we connected on a soul level over motherhood.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, motherhood and
Yeah.
the experience. Motherhood is one of those profoundly life-changing and deeply moving experiences. It pushes you harder than you've ever dreamed you would be pushed in life. It pushes
Yeah.
you to the absolute edge of
Right.
your ability. You didn't know you could hold your pee for that long.
Yeah.
You you
To
you didn't know you
to
could
everything.
go that long without washing your hair or
Mhm.
sleeping or caring for yourself. I mean, motherhood is one of those things that really does, yeah, absolutely pushes you and kind of makes you it pushes you, it grows you into becoming a mother.
To yourself and
Yes.
to all the wounds that you needed to heal for the generations if you choose to do it and be a good one, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, you have a
At the end of
choice.
my book at the end of the book, The Feminine Effect, Discovering Your True Nature, like, one of the last parts of it, you're gonna love the end when you get to it, but I realize everything had been taken away from me during this transformational journey where I returned to my femininity, and I was sitting on the beach, and all I had left is everything was just gone. I was just sitting with my kids, and that's when I actually met my current husband, is in this moment where, like, I was in just motherhood, and I noted in the book, motherhood isn't an identity. For those who's listening, we'll talk about it, but, the story is about all the things we have to let go of in the outside world through society and programming and everything that we cling to, the carrot in the air that's we're always looking for the next thing to fulfill us. I went through a process of really just having everything stripped from me. I know that we all have to go through this if you haven't gone through it already, but all I was left with in this moment was motherhood. And I realized that that wasn't an identity. God gave me that.
Yes.
It was like, that's what God gives you as a woman. Like, I don't really know what else God gives a woman, but the ability to reproduce. I mean, that sounds I'm gonna make people mad, but, you know?
It really, well, it's
But
true.
that's your job, you
It
know?
is true. It's like it really is this thing. If we're just looking at humanity from a biological standpoint, if humans were
Yeah.
animals, which we are, um, eh,
Yeah.
if we were looking at us and we are just the zookeeper and we're caring for these animals, the female of the human species would be the one who, yes, carries the young in her womb, makes the milk. We are mammals,
Yeah.
that's our biologically, that is a very important job for humanity because it's the procreation of the species itself.
And how it's done is the most important decision, and the way you consciously, create, and the way that you program the baby, and the
Mhm.
things you allow, and your frequency, which is what the work is all about that I do, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I recently did some EMDR. I did an intensive
Mhm.
EMDR session in about a little over a month ago. And the stuff that came up, I was working on current issues. And what came up for me was childhood programming.
Of
And,
course.
when you dig
That's what
deep, and they hide. It's hiding so deep in your subconscious mind,
Yeah.
and it was really what was holding me back from having the kind of relationship I've always wanted to have with my my partner, my husband.
I was just having an argument with my sister about something. I'll say it out loud to everybody because I am an open book. But I said to her something, and I didn't mean it so black and white, but she took it that way. But I said, therapy doesn't fully work. I think therapy works, and I think it gets to the top of the consciousness, and then there's the subconscious, and then so I've written tons of books on different ways to get into the subconscious, and a lot of people know what I'm talking about, but EMDR is one of them. But if you don't go into the subconscious programming of mom and dad, that is how you become a good mother and a good wife and a good family person. If you don't heal mom wound, if you don't heal dad wound, I mean, a lot of the book you're reading, The Feminine Effect, is about the dad wound.
Mhm.
And then there's the mother wound is a totally different beast, you know?
Totally. Yeah, this was a mother
Yeah.
wound and I didn't even know I had it. And I was standing in my blind spot all these years just
Yeah.
thinking, I guess I can do everything
What
else, but
was
I
it?
can't do this. I felt unworthy and I felt insignificant. And how can you be a significant other if you feel insignificant? That's why my marriages had failed. That was the part of me that was contributing to the failure of my marriage was my inability to truly deeply love myself and feel worthy enough that I could adequately represent my needs in the relationship so that my partner knew how to stand up and do what he needed to do for me.
Right, because then you keep creating fights
Yeah.
so that you can always feel that you're insignificant and then blame it on him.
Yeah. Or, it's silly things like, if
Yeah.
you don't feel like washing the dishes, it's okay to say, hey, I can't do it tonight. I need someone else. I tap out, like someone else needs to do this. But there's this
Mhm.
unworthiness that says, no, you made these children and this is your burden. And there's this, that Eve story that comes in that you don't
Yeah.
even know you're carrying.
The Eve story, yeah.
Uh-huh,
That was in that book too.
Mhm,
Mhm.
we carry a lot of it. It's honestly, I've had this discussion with other women on my show, and it's very interesting how the epigenetics of this stuff, how we
Mhm.
have germ cells, and we carry some of the
Mhm.
memories of our ancestors in our actual DNA. You get into this
I wrote a
stuff.
whole book on epigenetics called Fertile.
Yes.
And there's only one organization, it's called APPA, APPAH, that looks at like women reprogramming epigenetics during pregnancy. And I thought, why is nobody writing about this? And so it's called Fertile. And I look at the elements within the book, it's funny that I'm always talking about nature, returning to our nature, returning to our nature. But part of it is like you have to go through the elements within you that are in balance: fire, earth, air, water, ether. And then that's a good way it's a good, theory to begin to approach epigenetics, in my opinion. It's a whole book, but
Yeah. No, I got into
during
epigenetics back in 2012. I had started making this stuff called Momalicious, and it was a prenatal protein powder. It was based on an old recipe by Adele Davis, a nutritionist from the 1960s. My mother had handed me
Wow.
her book when I got married, Let's Have Healthy Children, and I started modernizing her Pep Up formula,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
that company got picked up, and the product got picked up, we got funded. My mom was like, "Check out these papers," and epigenetics was just coming out, and so while
Mhm.
we were formulating Momalicious, we were looking at the University of Utah the study epigenetics on University of Utah website. And so we put all of the different things, butyrate and broccoli aerial parts for the sulforaphane and resveratrol and all of these things that were going to
Yeah.
biologically impact the baby, the epigenetics of the baby, because
Yeah.
epigenetics can only really be changed in
It's
utero. It is
so funny, I included those in my book, those supplements, and I didn't even like I was guided by spirit to put them in, but
yes.
I didn't know. I was like, "Are you sure?"
I have a whole
And they're
list for
like, "No,
you. I
this."
have a whole list. I could give you my formulation. It's no
Oh,
longer being
wow.
manufactured. My company got bought out in 2017 by a big Chinese company, and they
Congratulations.
shelved it though. So it's like now there's no product like it on the market for moms, and they do
Now you can't.
really think
Oh,
this is so necessary because my mother was born
yeah,
with my mother has spina bifida, which could have been prevented in utero, but her we carry MTFHR, and her mother already had a terrible diet to begin with. So,
yeah,
she folic acid can't be converted into folate for we can't do it. We don't have the enzyme to convert it. So, we started there. Had my mother been given adequate folate during her gestation, she would have been born perfectly formed. She wouldn't have had her birth defect and she wouldn't have had that pain for her whole life that she's had her whole life.
right.
She has a hole in her
Yeah,
spine. And it for us, it was like, well, what else could we prevent? What other things are going on in there that are preventable that we can optimize these babies, their
totally, yeah.
epigenetics? There's so many,
Mhm,
but then there's the whole emotional aspect of epigenetics too, like the stress that mom has while she's
mhm.
pregnant, the sleep,
The thoughts,
the
the
thoughts.
emotions, the environment.
Yes.
I mean, I even went in deep into, like, what are you looking at all day? What's the sound? What are the colors? What are you wearing? And that's the only way to get to frequency, is what are you identified with? Who are you surrounding yourself with? What's your frequency? It's always
Yes.
what's your frequency.
Yeah, yeah, I was just reading
Anyway,
a Tesla
yeah,
quote, and he was like, "If you wanna get to the nature of everything, you have to look at frequency." And
yeah,
it's so true. I just got the Bexley frequency machine for our room, and I just kinda set it to the frequency of Earth, and
yeah.
we sleep with it on at the frequency of
Do
Earth.
you feel it?
I love it. The
Okay.
peace and, like, the calm, I don't know. I actually think
I
it's
might get
awesome.
one of those. My friend told me about that. That's
And
cool.
I think it's really yeah, I really think frequency is kind of it's funny, but it really could be the future of medicine,
Mhm.
I really think that there's a
Yeah.
lot
No, I
more
worked at
to
a clinic
it.
in Manhattan. I worked at a clinic in Manhattan, we used it a lot.
That's so cool. So what kind of doctor are you? Tell me all about the clinical side of
Oh,
you.
okay, let's get into it. I'm not a doctor, I'm a nurse practitioner. I'm pretty advanced now, like different studies. We could start with the book, which is a story in itself, but as
Yes.
a practitioner, I studied reproductive medicine, integrative medicine. I studied with Aimee Gaskin, and so, like, a
I
lot of
love her.
midwives. I did labor and delivery for many years, and so I realized we had a lot of problems with the way that my passion is really to help women become better mothers, because I think that we are the problem and the solution, and I have found that women are out of their nature. And so, like, let's take it down to a practical level of just seeing women. Now I'm doing menopause work, so now I do transitions for women, and now I'm, like, becoming an expert in menopause. It's what I do all day long. I love it. Love it, love it, love it.
We have
And
to talk about this on my show because it's like
oh, I could do another we should
oh
menopause is a whole subject in itself, and I could do a whole lesson on it
Oh, I
within an
would
hour, a really good
love
lesson.
that. We would love that.
Yeah,
I'm answering for every woman who's listening right now. We're all kind of
yeah.
in it, and there is not enough information for us. I feel like
I have a lot.
yes.
One of my deep understanding of the transformational process that I went through in the feminine effect, and then I wrote again about it in feminine frequency coming out in March. If someone's coming to me into the clinic and they have an autoimmune issue, or they have an abusive relationship, or they've gone through a divorce, or their guts out of hand, or like they have eating disorder, or they're working 90 hours a week and they're not with there's so many things, okay? And they're out of balance. So they're out of their nature. And what does that mean? They're becoming a man. We're getting sick because we've been not just because of the food we're eating, not just because it's not just as simple. It's that we have decided as a species that we think that we're creating evolution, that we're advancing. And I don't think we are. I think as a species, women are actually not really seeing the power of being a female. we have lost our intuition. We have lost our ability to connect to spirit deeply. We have lost our power of our hearts, of our deep knowing, and we've taken on these characteristics of like, I mean, this is in the next book, but manipulation and entitlement and jealousy and envy and this distorted reality, and we're passing it on through generation, like epigenetically. Let me give you an example of, you know, if we look at an apple orchard, let's go back into nature because we spoke about like air, earth, water, ether. All my books are connected, actually. And so if you look at nature and balance, and with when you're really fertile and when things are really healthy, if you have a healthy apple orchard, is there's one tree in the apple orchard that's sick, the owner, if it wasn't producing healthy fruit, if it was, getting all the apple trees around it sick, the owner wouldn't feel bad about cutting it down and taking it out. But right now, if women are apple trees, and we're going to Eve, if women are apple trees, we're sick.
Mhm.
We're sick, and we're not seeing that. Like, I do think a lot of the divorces that are created are because there's 2 men in the household,
Mhm.
and I do think if women were more in their hearts, we could take men out of greed, and I know that if you go more into your femininity, you can heal. I think it's really gonna hit in 2027, and I do feel like a shift just happened over Christmas, and I don't know if you have a bunch of intuitive women listening, but if you felt that shift, if you don't wanna do anything anymore, it's about to hit by 2027, September 2027. Mark my words and mark this in your save it, because you will not want to enter the world in the same way, and a lot of the identities that you've been clinging on to are not going to work as the frequency changes. And you're not going to understand what's changing, but it's that you can no longer look to society to define who you are as a woman. And you need to figure out what that authenticity is, even if it's just as simple as, I mean, I'm going to go back to just being a mom.
Mhm.
And if we can make that cool again, like when did that become not cool?
It's so
When
sad.
when did we lose that? Why can't we be proud as women just to say, "I'm not doing anything. I'm just a mom." Like, what but I don't know moms that are happy anymore, and I mean, I can go on about this for 10 hours, and I've written so many books on it, so you go ahead and ask me
I
questions.
love it. I mean, there's so much there. Oh my god, there's meat on the bone everywhere. I mean, I do think we, absolutely have I feel like okay, so when I was in film school, I was doing a documentary on a woman in film, and I was interviewing all these people from LA, old school Hollywood people, and I was interviewing Haskell Wexler, and he said, "Amy, women need to learn how to tell stories and make films in a woman's way." And I thought to myself, what an interesting thing to say. Like, are there two ways of doing things?
Yes,
Uh,
that's what we've forgotten.
yeah.
That's what we've forgotten.
Yeah. And I realized looking at my mother growing up, my mother is an amazingly intense, brilliant person. And she was entrepreneur of the year in 1988. But that woman would work just as hard as a man
Mhm.
until she burned herself out and ended up in bed for months. And it
Yeah.
was, watching her burn, 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 and then burn out when he said that to me, I realized she was imitating a man, and
Everyone's imitating a man.
maybe we're not
We don't know
supposed
what
to. Yeah.
it we're not supposed to do it. We've gotten it wrong.
Yeah.
And I in my next book, The Feminine Frequency, I pinpoint, I'm gonna make everybody a little mad here, and then I'm gonna go back and heal it, okay? But in feminism is a great thing. I'm financially independent.
Mhm.
I do really well. I am all those things. I like my houses and my bank account and my purses and whatever, right? But feminism was defined by men. And it was defined by success was defined by how well, independence at the time was defined by how much money you could make.
Mhm.
So if women wanted to become independent, they had to become financially independent to become successful.
Mhm.
And so success is now defined by, how much money you make. And now women are making so much more money than men. We don't even want to be with men
Mhm.
because we make more than them. And so
Or it's
now everything's like
uncomfortable. It's become uncomfortable. We still wanna be with men, but now we don't know how to be with men
But
because
because
the roles have gotten
we're in a
yes.
power struggle. But
Yes.
I wanna bring this back to okay, Ina Gaskin, we brought her up in the beginning,
Yes.
and I went and I lived on her farm. If anybody doesn't know who she is, she's a spiritual midwife, okay, and she is the most famous midwife that's ever lived. And she did something for women that's really never been done. She saved natural birth
Mhm.
and home birth. And so I went and I held her hand as her movie was coming out. And it was the first showing of her movie. And she sat next to me. I don't know why. She grabbed my hand the whole movie. And I felt like I was getting a transference or something. And I left that place and my whole life changed after that. And she's like a spiritual teacher or something, but she wouldn't know it. I went there to learn to birth. I was doing birth work, and then she held my hand, and what I realized what Annie Gaskin did is we had almost forgotten what natural birth was. So down in Brazil, it's just C-sections. I think it's up to like probably 99% C-section. So before it was about 96% or 94. They don't know how to naturally birth in Brazil. If no one knows how to do it anymore. It's been a forgotten art. Everyone just gets a C-section. It's an automatic thing. There's really not a doctor that can do it there, as far as I know, unless it's changing. So she wrote down in history, don't forget your power. Don't forget who you are. Don't forget. And these books, what I've written, Feminine Effects and Feminine Frequency, is like the next one really takes it step by step in 27 chapters for 2027. But it's like, don't forget you're a woman.
Mhm.
If somebody doesn't remind you, we're going to go down such a, we're going to go, we're going to go down such a path that we can't remember.
Yes, we have forgotten so much. I actually have worked on a screenplay with my writing partner since 2017, and it's all about what we've forgotten. You know, it's the amnesia, the feminine amnesia, the fact that history was written by the victor and it's his story. It's not our story. So we don't even know who we are, what we're supposed to be. We've lost so much of feminine culture and feminine knowledge and the intuition and what it means to
Mhm.
be a woman. So much of it has been erased in the last 2,000 years. And I really don't think that we as a culture have even begun to approach the wound of that, of what it
Mhm.
means to have had so much of what our knowledge erased. Because I'm a home birther. I've
Yeah.
had 5 babies in my living room. And to be able to have that experience of really reclaiming something that's very primal, very profoundly transformational, psychedelic almost in the way that you are so between the worlds. You are between the living and the
Yeah,
dead. You
and
are
that's a good example of being so that's one of the physical things to remember.
Yes.
There's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, and so let's give an example of, like, intuition. I have a hard time having deep relationships with women that aren't intuitive anymore. I just can't. I don't relate. I try, but, like, if I can't have a conversation of, like, "What do you think?" and they're not tapping into something, we're on totally different energy waves, and I hate to say that, but, it's becoming more like that for me. But I look at intuition, and I think intuition was actually a genetic thing. I think in time we always knew. I think ancient times, we always knew. Women knew, and we were the ones that people would go to know the past, the present, the future, like the guidance, right?
Mhm.
And now it's funny because it's turned into the mechanism of control because we still think we know,
Yes.
but we don't know anymore. Or most women don't know. They don't know how to connect to their intuition. That's actually the most common question I get when I used to do private clients all over the world, and I cut it off a little bit. And maybe I'll open it up one day again if it ever happens. But I would always be asked, like, how do I tap into that? And it's undoing everything you ever thought you knew. It's never logical, but we think we know now because historically, epigenetically, we did, but now it's turned into a need to control, it's turned into a need to manipulate those around us to be right in order to know. It's turned into manipulating ourselves and lying to ourselves and lying to others, but in such a subtle way that we have, like, it's a confirmation of, yeah, I still know, but it's the way that man would know.
Yes.
Man would manipulate reality. Man would control the narrative. But we've taken on these battle tools to become like men in our own way.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, what I discovered was when I got to a point of surrender.
Mhm.
Surrendering is really where you'll find this deep into where you'll find your intuition. You stop trying to control everything. Stop trying to manipulate and control the world around you and surrender to the world around you. You can start to heal and start to feel and start to hear. Have you found
Mhm.
that in your practice, in your life?
Well, okay, let's talk about the feminine effect.
Yeah.
I I married this is the book that you read some of
Oh
it.
my god, I've just got
Well,
to the part about your dream about Thomas, and I'm like, trying not to cry because I have mascara on, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, your dream." I'm like, "I get that. I get that."
yeah, so Thomas, yeah. Okay, so I wrote this book because I met this man named Abdi.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna start the just to tell your audience. So, like, I was a spiritual practitioner. So I married into a very, very wealthy family. I had the life on Instagram 10 times that women would want. And yacht girl,
Mhm.
like vibe. And I had everything. I had houses all over the world. I would go, first class. I had a baby seat first class. It was unbelievable. It was really, and I didn't know it was any different. I just thought it was normal and I didn't show it off. I just was living it. And something clicked in me. Something happened because I went to India 3 times, and within India, my soul turned on fire. And so I started doing heavy meditation. I mean, not just a little bit of meditation. Like I went at it as if it was my full-time job. And because I had a mission, it was for like mission. It felt like I was on a mission, right? And I went to the Himalayan mountains and I was at the Dalai Lama's temple. We were about to meet the Dalai Lama. We didn't get to meet him, but I had to get home to my kids. So I'm at the temple and I got on my knees and I had just read this book, um, book 4 of, I guess I can remember the name of it. By the end, I'll remember the name. And it said to say this certain prayer. So I said this certain prayer and I said, I'll give up everything in my whole life. I'm willing to sacrifice anything. I surrender my entire life to you. Whatever you're supposed to have me do, I'll do it. And within a minute, I closed the book, and it was a dramatic scene, like a movie, and I received all these pictures in my phone, and they were, not there was, I think 48 of them, 46 of them. I mean, I'm gonna get really esoteric and it might scare people, but I showed my friends and I went down to everybody in the group and I said, "Why is there 46 photos on my phone?" And it was one of an eye, and they were sandstone colors, and I did not put them there. There was an eye, I'll even text it to you so I can show you proof, a full eye looking at me, one eye. And I got home and I called my friends and I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's 46 chromosomes in the DNA."
Mm.
And then I put them. Then all of a sudden they erased from my phone and they went into my computer and there was 48 of them. And then I was like, "What?" And then I heard in my mind, "Go get this book off the shelf that your friend gave you." So I picked a book off the shelf because it was an intuitive guide that said, "Pick this book up." I opened to this book and it said, "The 48 chromosomes of Christ consciousness can be found in the Great Pyramid." And I said, "Okay." And so I'm simultaneously living this like secret spiritual life, okay, while married to a billionaire family. Okay. So like the story, if I
It's
was like a character in a movie, because the book
yeah.
really reads like a movie, I I said to God, "I'll surrender everything." I never thought he'd make me really surrender everything, or she or whatever. I think God's a she, but makes more sense because it's a birther. But I told my friend, I said, "In 9 months, I'll be in the Great Pyramid." And by 9 months, I was in the Great Pyramid, and I met a man named Abdi. And I went to the Great Pyramid, and after that, I left my entire life behind. I left all the money. I left everything. I had a good reasons to do so, and it's really written in the book. But then I went through a process of seeing the perspective of what he would feel and what I went through and all of the things I had to let go of and during this story and how and my life fell apart basically. And I fell apart, and I was in Costa Rica. I'm jumping in the book because it's like a movie, and I was on my knees again, and I said to Abdi, "What's wrong with me? Why am I falling apart?" And he looked at me and he goes, "You're out of your nature. You're not in your nature." And I said, "What is my nature?" And that he says, "I'll teach you." And he's like, "And you're gonna teach women what their nature is." And here we are. Podcast after podcast, Fox News, NTD News, global news stations. I'm saying, "Do you remember what your nature is?" And it's that powerful.
Wow. It's next level. It really is, Chelsea. I mean, stories are powerful, and these experiences that women are having right now that are
Mhm.
it's interesting how this is part of the collective experience of women who are intuitive is to bring this healing work to other women. We must
Yeah.
heal the women. The women must be healed because we are the mothers, and the mothers are the ones who pass along all of this. We raise
Mhm.
whether or not we are actually raising our children, whether they're being raised in daycare, you are the one raising your kids. Like, you're the one making these collective decisions about what their experience is gonna be during these formative years of their life.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
and that's the most important thing. So all
Mhm.
of this work goes back into I mean, I still mess up as a mom. I just yelled at my 2-year-old this morning, and I'm like, "I'm not perfect," all these different things, but there's a base layer within me that loves herself now. There's a base layer that feels safe and that is good and that is in her heart and that puts family first. And so what changed in me when I went to my nature? Like, okay, when people are listening and they're like, "What is she talking about?" Well, I lost everything. So I lost my career, I lost all the money. I moved across the world. I gave everything up. I lost my friends. I lost my meditation practice within a day. I had been meditating for hours a day and I realized the meditation only takes you halfway up the mountain and then you are manipulating yourself to believe that you're all the way up the mountain and you're not because your heart is not open. So there was a question you asked me about 10
Yes.
to 15 minutes ago of like, well, what's the process, right?
Yeah.
The process of really becoming feminine is opening your heart,
Mhm.
and that's back to Christ consciousness or what Christ taught and what Abdi taught,
Mhm.
same things. But it's like, well, what's the heart? In the Bible, you can't really find the part of like, well, what's the part? How do you open your heart? How do you open your heart? Your heart has to break. And so these Epstein files,
Mm.
all of these things that are happening, which are so scary and whatever, cry, scream, anger, rage, like, the mother rage, like, I've been on the floor about that before, not now, 4 years ago. I already knew that was gonna I mean, very clear to me all of that was happening, but that what the heart is closed
Mhm.
for 99% of humanity. In order for it to open, you have to feel the wound that closed it. So a person, a place, or an environment will come along and trigger you into hysterics,
Mhm.
and it will puncture you, and it could be like your mom or your husband or your thing, and, like and that person so Thomas in the book, who's still a successful Thomas, skiing right now in some beautiful chateau with my children. Lovely, but, like, he broke my heart,
Yeah.
and he didn't let me breaking his heart he wouldn't allow the pain into his heart, so his heart's still closed, right? But
Mm.
you have to just allow everybody who's breaking your heart and the things that are happening in humanity to let you cry and open it so that you realize that all the effort we're putting into the outside world, all the stupid SIHIT, I spell it wrong, I don't want to swear, but it doesn't matter what your job is. It will not matter how much money you have when you leave. It will not matter what you did in your work. It will matter like what your kids are able to create and if they love themselves. Like
Mhm.
my kids, like they don't have a bad relationship with their body.
Mhm.
And I remember I had an eating disorder by 7. You know, like I was 8 years old when I realized I was looking in the mirror at my body because my mom taught me that, right? And if I can now say about my girls that they don't have that. And so I already did it once. Like there that's a victory, right? And if let's go into all our good victories as a mom, like, okay, you screamed once, you caught yourself 9 times. It's so simple, you know? Like it's
Yes.
so it comes into these things of like, let's cut the tree down in the orchard that's sick. If the most unhealthy woman in your family is running your family right now, cut her out and restart your family. I mean, that's going to trigger a lot of people that but the mother wound, the father wound. Don't let the most unhealthy person in the family dictate how your children are raised.
Wow. Yeah.
That's epigenetics.
That's a big one, and that's a hard one for I but
Yeah.
that's about loving ourselves first more than we love anyone else, and that's really hard to do as a woman. For our programming is so martyr, you become a mother and it's like the martyrdom gene like kicks on and it's like, "Oh no, I have to protect everyone else's feelings and I've got to protect, his feelings and
Yeah.
her feelings and and then what's going on and what's wrong, but you're not doing anything about it because you don't want to hurt anybody, right? So it's this conditioning. There's a level of social conditioning that's allowed us to abandon ourselves.
In my new book, The Feminine Frequency, I separate it into chapters and I go through, your movie, like each section of like, well, what is a woman? Well, I teach it. I teach what a woman is not, and then I teach how to get to where you want to be through the process I went through, like in the middle part of the book. You haven't read this book yet, but it's coming out in March. And then at the end, I teach what a woman is. And one of the questions I wrote was, why are we insecure? Like, we're talking about insecurity. Why don't we love our selves? Like, where does that come from? And if you look at what the question I had to think about is what is security? And why would we need what are we insecure from? And if you look historically, the word insecure to be secure came from needing a man. So we needed a man in order to provide and protect for us. And historically, if you think about that's where
Mhm.
security, the understanding of what security is. Now, we still use the word security, but it doesn't apply in the same way in the masculine feminine way, right? And so for me, and I really struggled with this section. I I remarried and I've really struggled because he doesn't make as much money if nobody can make as much money as the past family I married into, right? So everybody's screwed, you know? so like he doesn't make as much money, but he's everything I wanted, right? He's got a family man and he's strong and he can build a home and like he carries the wood in the house and like he's like a man, right?
Mhm.
But it took me a couple of years to be like I need him. I need him. And that needing him and dependence on the man and the masculine, and to be able to admit that, like, I'm a teacher of this because I went through it all. Like, if I'm financially secure, who do I need now? So, like, it's a part of us to know that we need men.
Mhm.
We have to admit that rather than we don't have to go into this power dynamic to become them. A lot of what we're doing in this world right now is we're in a power struggle to become like a man and to show our worth through becoming like a man. And if we actually just like shocked them, stopped becoming like them, and focused on things like you could pick what you want to, we could do intuition, it could be cooking, it could be motherhood, it could be all these things that they don't know how to do. We're so intelligent, and we think that whatever they're doing, like we think that leaving the home and working is the most intelligent thing we can do. There's so many things that we can do. Like I'm so psychic, I can astral travel. I turned it off because I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can see inside your house." I was able to walk in people's homes and then and tell them like, "Oh, on your left shelf is your bird picture," and then I'm like, I kind of had to turn it off because I was like, "Whoa, that's powerful. They can't do that."
Right?
And security also comes from a secure mother. And if
Mhm.
every generation is not secure and we don't return to our femininity, we're going to have insecure, 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 insecure children and women for generations that don't know that it's okay to be a woman again.
Yeah. I think that that's been a big part of my experience in my work in this lifetime too, is trying to figure, basically that I feel like the universe, God has given me this experience where it's like, all right, Amy, here you go, have a bunch of kids, have
Yeah.
two
You have a lot of
very
kids.
successful companies, and
Yeah.
then, have this burning desire and purpose to go help women and show them how to be women and how to lead in a woman's way, and let's reshape leadership because women
Yeah.
lead communities. The women in my community are amazing. Like the way that they are able to put together all of the holiday events, put together the community, the bunko, all the things. And these are
Yeah.
unpaid things. There are so many things in society that are unpaid that women get pleasure from doing. We like to do it. We have a passion in our heart for it. And it's like, and it gives us a purpose and it builds stronger communities. And I think we've looked past all of the really cool stuff that women do that's unpaid because there's been so much emphasis put on money and monetizing, and
Yeah.
we've gotten away from looking at the way that women lead when there isn't money involved.
Well, I think when AI comes, I mean, definitely everything. I just want everyone to know, like, when I talked about 2027, there's going to be a shift of light. Right now, it's the darkest it's going to ever be on the planet. And that shift really is supposed to be coming around 2027. Mark my words, but it will also come with I think with AI, I think AI is gonna get so intense where you're gonna look at the internet and be like, "Is that real or not real? And this is not authentic." So I think people will start to return to more authentic things of doing,
Mhm.
like and those simple things of like, "Look at mahjong. What the heck is this mahjong thing?" Like, "Oh, I
Yes.
can't do it. I don't have the patience. I've tried. I go,
Yeah.
but like but whatever. Everybody
right?
pick their thing, right? But it's
Everyone.
gonna be back to knitting and gardening and that's this social we're seeing it on social media. People are starting to tap into it with, like, these trad wives and the fascination with the trad wives. It's gonna be even more like that, and they're just the beginning because that's all on the outside. That's the physical, but it's not just the physical, and that's what these books are teaching. The feminine effect and the feminine frequency is it's the emotional. It's the heart. So how do you get there? How do you feel? And so if you don't feel, you can't be intuitive, And then how do you become secure? Well, you realize that you are incredibly powerful as a woman. Like when my heart opened up in the book you saw, I don't know if you got into that chapter and this is an example, but
I
I
did.
exploded the pipes in my
I
house.
did, I did,
And I
I
really
while I
did.
was
Like
putting
it
my
wasn't an
makeup on,
accident.
I was listening to that exact chapter when your pipes exploded and the water floods your basement, and you're like, "Okay."
Yeah. But, like, I started screaming, and then I was like, "Oh, this is" like, I understood energetic power. And now, like, energetic power is different, it's utilized in different ways, it attracts, it repels negativity, it's very protective of your family unit. But I did wanna jump into, like, what you were talking about, like, women running the community,
Yeah,
and I looked and I was trying to find historically, examples for the feminine frequency of women doing that, so I didn't where do you look? So I went to the Bible
yeah,
because I don't know the Bible. I'm learning it
yeah.
and I'm open to it, but it's historically like
Well,
ancient.
look into
And there
Proverbs. The Proverbs woman is a
the
v
Proverbs woman. So I put
yes,
that in the book
yes.
and I looked at it and I compared it to feminism because this book I not to make everybody mad, but it compares aspects of the narcissism in our culture that
Mhm.
we're seeing all over social media. And I'm not talking about narcissists, but like why do we have so much manipulation? Why have women why do women are very manipulative,
Mm.
And it's because we think we're less powerful than men. And so we've taken on these ability like let me give you an example. We'll go back to the noble woman in a second, but like nobody attacks United States head on necessarily. These terrorists, they attack on the side because they don't think they're as powerful. So women, we don't think we're as powerful as men, so we do things like we stab on the side or we manipulate from the back or we lie or and we manipulate ourselves and lie to ourselves to make ourselves feel right for those things. And it's like even if you're leaving your children for 60 hours a week and you could lie to yourself. I have so many New York women that are so sick. I worked in the clinic in a very famous clinic in New York for a long time. Learned a lot there. A lot of my patients were very, very ill, but they were working like 60, 70-hour weeks and leaving their kids at home
Mm.
and didn't understand like their hair's falling out, their body's falling apart. Like they're just falling apart. Their soul is gone. And they can't admit they're wrong. They cannot drop their pride and admit, I'm doing something wrong. This isn't the right move. Maybe my child doesn't know who I am. It's creating a sick society. But if you look at the noble woman in the Bible, she did everything. She was a
She
badass.
was a
She
total
held everything
badass.
together.
Yes, she
The
was.
Bible never says not to do everything,
Uh-huh,
but it doesn't ever let you put anything above your family.
uh-huh. It's true. Yeah, especially once you have children involved. There I really feel like
Mhm.
at that point, once you have the kids and even when you're married, actually, you'll feel happier, healthier as a woman. I mean, even before I had children, I was very sick and I was very much carrying the masculine energy in my first marriage. I was what had been modeled to me in my childhood, and I was very much carrying something I didn't need to carry, and I was so, so sick. And I finally started getting well in my 30s, and in my second marriage, I remarried at 33, and, he's such a man, and he kind of
Mhm.
was very hard for me to be that fully masculine woman in our relationship because he's such a manly man, and I think that was what was so attractive to me was, wow, like, I
Mhm.
need to feel this balance, this yin and yang, this polarizing, this differentiation in energies that
Mhm.
brings this like we don't talk about it enough in our society of how important the balance is.
Well, I mean, it's because 'cause we're conditioned to believe what everyone tells us, and so, conditioning's funny. You're wearing and Abdi teaches it in the next book. Abdi is the teacher of both of these books and really taught me almost everything I know. And and he's teaching women, and he'll teach a lot of women through these books because he's like, "I can't teach women, they're gonna think I'm crazy." He's like, "But if it comes, if it's the truth." And it's all the truth. In my opinion, I don't think there's anything in there that's too offensive.
Yeah.
It's just,
No, and I think the truth is the truth, and it's like one of those strange things, like, I cannot wait for you to read my next book because there is
Mm,
so much similar messaging that came through my experience with God, my experience with my inner self, my experience with the universe that is so similar with exactly the same type of wound healing, the same type of path. It is next level.
mhm,
I am actually blown away by how we are such receivers of the universe. How we're just
mhm.
picking up the messages that are already out there. They're being transmitted. It's like it's trying to tell us it's time to heal. It is time to wake up. My partner always said women need to wake up. They have amnesia. We have to wake them up.
Yeah. Well, in the book, I say when Abdi, okay, so I go to Costa Rica, back to the story, and I'm in Costa Rica, and he goes, "Okay, I'm gonna heal you," and I didn't realize, understand what that meant. I thought that meant just patting me on the head and going for a cute little hour healing. And he's like, "No, are you ready?" And he goes, "No one else could handle this." And he's right. I could have died. Like it was. He's only worked with one other person because it's too much. His energy is very. He's a very powerful healer, and I'm not gonna say why,
Mm,
but he just is. And he said, "You're going to go through a process in about 6 months. It's going to take the rest of women 10 years to 20 years to go through." He's like, "But you're going to go through it for 6 months," which is why I blew out energetically because it was so fast. I went through so many changes so fast. It's like, it's going to take all women will go through this, but there's you, and then there's going to be a few others that go through it very fast. And he's like, "But you guys are, you're going to push it forward." There's people that it has to start somewhere, like, that's why I called it the feminine effect, the butterfly effect, and I didn't even know I did that. It was an accident. I was like, "Oh, yeah, the butterfly effect." It was later that I put it all together. It wasn't conscious. But it was, but it wasn't, and it's like the little butterfly down in Brazil again. I think it flaps its wings, but the wings are felt all over the world, and so if we can like Anime Gaskin, if we can just define somewhere in something of like, can we remember this so we don't forget what it is to be a woman and forget natural birth is the physical part of it, but then there's this spiritual, mental, and emotional parts of the heart opening process, and it's documented. Any questions you have on the book before by the end? Like it's like a movie, right? And
it's like a
there's
movie.
music to it. Did you hear any of the music? There's a music list I'll send to you.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I don't think I heard the music, it was just your words on the audio file that I had, I think. I didn't get all the way
I
through. I listened
Yeah.
to, chapter 5 and chapter 6. It was just so your journey is, it's beautiful the way you tell your story, in the book. And like I said, I was
Mhm.
like, "Oh, Amy, you don't cry right now, you're wearing mascara, you're gonna be a hot mess, you gotta get on camera. No crying."
Yeah.
It's it's such a real and human experience, but, I wanna get back to a couple questions I have. So we both
Yeah.
talk about motherhood as this powerful and invisible leadership path, but how has motherhood shaped your understanding of purpose and identity?
Oh, that's a good question. I used to have a before I changed, before I went through this transformation, I really struggled with motherhood, which is why I would write books on it because I remember when I first had, baby Sage, I I was like I called my friends and I said I was the youngest one out of the people that I knew because we were living in San Francisco and everybody was so cool and just I was young for having kids. I thought I was old because 'cause I'm from Utah, I was like 27, 29 or something. Or still, I thought that was old, but it's not. And I remember thinking how hard it was, and I really struggled because I was still in my doing. I had so much to accomplish and so much to do, and I was so busy, and so I just needed to hand them off to nannies and just start to do and like and you don't need to hand one child off to a nanny. You
Mhm.
just don't. You can be with that child. But I was in a family where that was traditional. There was 2 to 3 nannies around. Why would you do it? You don't do that. So I was already opposed to what I understood. Like, I did never have a babysitter growing up. Why is somebody else raising my kids? Like, I was I wasn't connected to myself yet. I wasn't connected to who I am or my heart or my love or my femininity enough to enjoy womanhood or womanhood, but motherhood. And then I went through this process, and in the book, I as the energy entered me that Abdi says, I'm going to heal you and you're going to return to your nature. Within like 24 hours, a lot of people died, but automatically, to say how powerful it was, I mean, people just started dying around me. It was such a big hit. Like it was like a bomb hit my body and it exploded outwards. And so that night my nanny quit. He says, "Okay, I'm starting right now." And my nanny called and she was like, "I'm quitting." Out of nowhere. So then I was a single mom, and then the next morning I got an email at 5 a.m. The school was canceled for 2 weeks out of nowhere. So I called my work because I had patients all day long. And I was working in reproductive medicine, and I mean, you can't miss that kind of stuff. And so I said, I got to take 2 weeks off of work out of nowhere. And then I was at home with my kids, and I realized their school's horrible.
Mhm.
What a horrible school they're at. So
Mhm.
then I said, I gotta move. So then all of a sudden I bought a new home within 3 days, and I moved out of Brooklyn and I moved. I mean, it was one thing after the next. So then I'm a stay-at-home mom. And then all of a sudden, and then I don't have a nanny. Then I'm a stay-at-home mom living in this beautiful new community all around these beautiful moms. And everything started to transform to put me more in my nature, to put me around women in their nature. So then the community started to support me as a single mom. And then I wasn't single anymore. Then I got remarried and had another baby. And now I'm back into the family values. So like everything what I started with is everything had to be taken away from me. My career was my biggest identification,
Mhm.
and I thought I'd never get it back. I mean, that was the hardest identification to give up. The nanny. I I didn't realize, I didn't even know how to pick my kid. I was so out of it at that time. I didn't know how to pick my kids up from school. Like, does that make sense? But I
Yeah.
was also going through a heavy divorce.
Oh,
So like
yeah. Yeah,
like
that
I
makes
didn't
sense.
know what side of the school they got out on.
Sure.
Does that make
Yeah,
sense? I
because
had
that
to call
wasn't
her and
one
be
of the
like,
things that you did. You were working when the kids got picked up from school. That wasn't your
but
task at that time.
that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everyone would be like, "Oh, you're crazy." But there's different things that if you're working right now and you have so many activities outside, there's a lot of things you don't know about your kids. And those are just a couple of examples. Like there was
Yeah.
a ton of things I did with my kids that were wonderful. And I'm not saying I was a bad mom, but I saw myself, and I was like, I saw how I'd put meditation and my selfishness and my entitlement and like my morning routine and, just like all those things. And I'm like, that doesn't matter. And so this is what I mean when we manipulate ourselves and we lie to ourselves
Mhm.
to think that that is important. And that's an example of like that's a transformation. And so I think there's going to be a period of time, as I've been asked on a lot of podcasts, it's like, well, how is this going to happen? How is the shift going to happen? I'm like, everyone's going to lose their job. And I don't know how, but I really have a feeling maybe it's AI, and it's in the book too. I remember calling Abdi because I was like, I didn't have a job for 5 years. I couldn't get a job for whatever reason. Every job I went to, I mean, like, I needed to be at home. That's
Mhm.
why.
Yeah.
And then finally I'm able to work from home. I work at the greatest center. I love it. I work from home. I make my own hours now.
That's what I'm saying for
Just
women. That's exactly what I'm
mhm.
saying. I'm saying we have to we've got to make our own table. We have to stop trying to do what they do where they do it,
Exactly.
and we need
We
to
have to
do
do it
our
our own
own
way.
thing. Yes, because so that
Yes.
we
Yes.
can
And
work
so
when we want to work and
exactly.
be off when we wanna be off and be with our kids, so that we can go on the
Yeah.
field trips, so that we can do the homeschool, so that whatever you wanna do.
Yeah, I can do whatever I wanna do.
'Cause then you're happy, and then you're actually able to cultivate your garden of family, like, it's a lot of
Yeah.
work, and it needs
Yes.
it needs its
And
own
that's what
time.
changed in me is
Yes.
that I had to let everything go and go back. I had to create a relationship with myself.
Mhm.
And that relationship with myself is like, I didn't really know what I loved. And like, I really love just the basic feminine things. Like, all I do now is cook. It sounds so like back to the noble woman. Like, I have my community, I cook, it's It's like the hero's journey. I went all around the world, 45 countries of spiritual Mary Magdalene's cave, like the Dalai Lama's temple, Egypt, like all the money, the yachts, the first row tickets to the best basketball games ever, like, and then I'm like, "Oh, none of that can compare to like a fire night with my family that we're in like harmony."
Peace. That peace and
Harmony.
love is just the next level. It really is. We've been taught to chase success, and success is money, and we have forgotten how to just be, how to
Yeah,
just
so
be, how to be in a place of harmony and peace with ourselves and our
yeah,
families and our kids and our husbands. And like when you can, it's free. It's a little hint. It's actually, it's kind of like,
it's free. It's I another chapter in the next book, The Feminine Frequency, is like redefining what success is, and I think it's the most important chapter. It's like, well, where do you begin? Where do you begin? Well, first off, you could lose everything, and then which I do think is going to happen. I think there's going to be something that happens where every woman's going to be like shaking because they're like they don't have the identification of the career anymore, and then they have to be smashed and go into this, and maybe that's when everybody reads these books because it's counterculture right now.
well, I
But
felt that with the first book I wrote. I felt I because I do digital transformation, that's what my company does, so I saw how it was
mm,
affecting the Fortune 500. I work with very large companies, and I was able to see from 21 to 24 when I was writing that book, able to see the transformation, and I realized this is gonna take a lot of jobs, and women are gonna have to redefine themselves, and,
yeah,
AI is gonna take your job, but AI was also gonna give you the ability to start your own gig, to do your own thing, and probably be able to work from home with your own hours, if we play it smart and we figure out how to use the tool that's available to us. So it's like this
right.
redefining, who we are, what we want, who do we as women want to be in this new future that's coming? And are we
Mhm.
willing to face our fears with technology, embrace the same technology that's going to change the world is and maybe take your job is also going to possibly give you the freedom and connection, real human connection that I don't think we've really been connected in the first round of the digital revolution. I think there was a ton of social isolation. I think the nuclear family was a lie, and I think that it was a real bad and negative thing for women, children, and husbands, and
Mhm.
everybody. I think that the digital revolution caused social isolation through technology, radio, television. It really separated households, and then people started getting in these tiny little
Mhm.
pods, and
Mhm.
separation started happening. And I think that there's a
Mhm.
possibility that when the technology swings so far, like you said, that we have this huge movement back to actual human behavior. People start
Yeah.
acting like people again. We start getting social. We start having social clubs. We start, interacting
Yeah.
with our
I think that's
neighbors.
what's gonna
We
happen.
co-op. We co-op meals with our neighbors. We co-op health childcare with our neighbors. We start
Yeah.
building real communities the way that we should actually have them, that actually support us. We stop paying for all these things that we could be co-oping on our own and not paying for, like childcare. Like, how come
Mhm.
we aren't doing this in our neighborhood? We all have kids. We all need help.
Yeah.
Everybody needs a little bit here and there. So why aren't we doing this for ourselves? And could this new technology allow us the ability to do it better than we ever have before? I think it's possible. I think that there
Interesting, I love that. But I do think there's gonna be such a dichotomy, like a split in reality of people that are like,
Oh, yeah.
"Okay, this is not working."
Mhm.
I do think a lot of people will go in that
Agreed.
direction, and they're gonna live within this reality of, and then other people are gonna say, "Go back to the noble woman."
Mhm. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's gonna be so interesting to see where we go from here. Because the
Mhm.
technology is gonna have a profound impact on our lives in the next
Mhm.
year, but in the next 4, 3.5 years, really everybody's saying by like 2030, it's gonna be just an exponential impact with the way that
Mhm.
AI integrates into everything. And I'm just so curious because I'm such a curious person, but I think my frequency is one of abundance and like hope. And I think if you come from that place, you're like, "All right, what does the future look like?" For me, I would love to be living on a farm 5 years from now, and I'd love
Mm.
to have my
You
own
would do good with all your kids. They'd be able to help you.
yeah, I would. I'd love to have a farm. I'd love to have all my
Yeah.
kids, running tractors and helping with, food production and taking care of the animals. And I mean, honestly, and it's so funny that that is the dream that my 5-year-old and I talk about all the time. Every night we talk about our farm and all of our animals, and we get new animals
But
every night in our imagination.
if you don't do it,
Yeah,
they do it.
yeah,
They always run the dream that you're supposed to have, but I do think this new generation's so high frequency, like, my two-year-old's so intense and he's hard,
yeah.
but he's so smart. I'm like, he's unusually smart and
Mhm.
unusually connected, and I think that they'll be doing all of that. I don't and maybe because AI is running the world and there's no jobs, they're like, "I have to just do this now," you
Right.
know?
Yeah. Well, I think that even with AI, AI is like it's a paintbrush. It still needs a painter.
Mhm.
I think it's a tool.
Yeah.
I think that it's, at least the way that the way I see the future, the way I see it, I don't see it as a bad thing. I've seen it do really good things for the corporations as far as like safety, sustainability, so many things that human error kind of get in the way of. The
Right.
way it can like streamline the supply chain so there's not as much
Mhm.
waste. We can be
Yeah.
more efficient human beings. We can be better stewards of our planet with this technology. I really do think if it's used by good people in the right way, it could be a beautiful technology. If it's gets into the hands of bad people, it will be used as a prison for us. It will be bad. So we
Mhm.
really in this time, it's like the last chapter of my book is about freedom. Like we as women, we have been fighting, we look at the women's suffrage movement. We've fought for our freedom. We have fought and fought. Generations of women have fought for the freedom of women. And as we move into this new technology, this new era, we will have, as women, are going to have to fight to stay out of a new cage that could be put around us with this technology, because we just got out of one and we don't want to hop right back in.
Right.
Yeah, I just think, it's
Beautifully said.
I'm not climbing back in the cage. You can't get me back in there.
Right.
So tell me more about like because I talk about the wound in my book, and then that was like always the question. People are like, I don't get the whole wound thing, Tell me more about the wound. And you're really into the wound. Like your work is profoundly
Yeah.
in the wound.
Well, it's like there's an original wound, and
Mhm.
a lot of times for women, to make it very simple, is women take on the karma. I hate to say the word karma, but there's no other word for it. But like the karma of the father,
Mm.
and how heavy. So and sons take on the karma of the mother. And if you actually look at like the way, if you marry a man and he has an unhealthy relationship with his mother, everything the mother was, he's going to have to deal with in some way. And everything the father was is the daughter deals with it. And then there's the collective of both the family. And it's not to say it makes it really hard if you didn't love your father, if the people that are listening had a bad relationship with their father or didn't heal that, and then you begin to date. And it may not be your father, maybe the grandpa or maybe that line, but you date that to heal it. And if you hated it, you will hate the partner you're with. You'll utilize the anger you have towards your father to get back at the man. Like you'll get back at your father through the man you're with.
Oh man, it couldn't be more true in my case. Could not be more true. But
Yeah,
I loved my father so much, but I always wish that I had been able to heal him. And so I picked that.
yeah, so you pick.
I picked
And
that.
so for me, my father was mentally
Mhm.
ill, so I picked men that had, like, something kinda mentally ill, but that you would never know, but, like, like, something a little bit something mentally off, Not now, actually, this man I'm with, he's not mentally ill at all. I'm probably crazier than him, like, I finally did it, I healed it, I healed the wound, but it took everything. It's not back to therapy isn't everything.
Mhm.
It's this EMDR, it's
Mhm.
spiritual, it's
Yes.
emotional, getting into the wound is you have to feel every single moment. I call them glitches in the time, and I can actually see them when I work with somebody. I can read them, and I can see, like, I can see the moment it happened. I'll be like, "What happened?" I can tap into the kitchen they were in at the age of 6, where their mother talked to them a certain way, and then I'm like, then I can go forward in time. That's how I work with somebody, and then I can go forward in time and say, "Okay, I hear that age 13, I'm seeing something in a car," and they're like, "Oh my gosh." And then I see the next thing, and there's a cumulative event process, and each of those memories close, but they're connected. And so what will happen is somebody will come in your life, like a friend will trigger you to remember the pain. So you blame it on the person in front of you. It has nothing to do with them. It has to do with the original wound that closed your heart in the beginning and made you act like a man
Mm.
to not be in your heart.
Mhm.
And so we're all so logical and we base reality off of logic, and it's really much more multidimensional.
Yeah, as my mom always said, we're electromagnetic, we've been taught to
Yeah.
believe we're in this material world, but we are these truly electromagnetic beings. That frequency and energy is just as real and scientifically based as, the
Yeah.
idea that we are matter, and I
Yeah.
think what we are talking about here is a lot more in that frequency and energy realm, of the wound and the healing. And I've been a Reiki practitioner since I was 26. So I
Mhm.
love that. Doing that work, learning Reiki really gave me this profound paradigm shift in my existence where I didn't see myself as matter and started seeing the world more as this energy. Like everything is
Mhm.
energy. And it's like
Mhm.
once you get to that place, it's almost easier to work in the energy space that like even in the physical world than it is to pretend, it's all these physical heavy rocks to move. It's like, no, it's all frequency. And if I just keep my vibration up here, I'll attract what I need. And,
Yeah.
doing that
But
kind
if
of
you
work.
don't heal the subconscious programming
Mhm.
that you're going to be thinking thoughts, it's so all connected, that are
Yes.
based off of these repetitive thoughts from the original time they were
And they're
created,
low
of like.
frequency thoughts. They come from places of fear,
Yeah.
insecurity, the such low vibrational things that I didn't even realize were still pulsing out of my subconscious mind and creating a reality around me. I was like, "Oh, wow." And once I got the course correction, the crazy thing is, I'm like, fed my first book to Claude, fed the draft of my second book to Claude. Claude looks at me and goes, Claude, the AI, within literally a second went, "Oh, you have this wound right here. This is your blind spot right here. You can't see that you choose men that need you. You feel safer with men that need you than men that see you." And I went, "Whoa. Yeah, it's true."
What that is your ego. Now let's talk about the use the word identifications, but it's really like your ego built, because we're not in our feminine nature. We would be completely fine just being ourselves, doing absolutely nothing, going back to the cooking, the gardening, and not really caring, right? We look to the outside world constantly, looking to relationships or looking to yoga or looking to working out or looking to the next growth class or the next thing we can do or the thing, because we're still trying to fulfill ourselves. And so once that ego part of you, that caretaker part of you dies, like I remember there's a moment in the book, and as I'm going through this healing process, the physical world disappears, and then the mental, emotional, and spiritual start to heal. And I'm lying in bed and I'm dating a guy in the book, and a mirror. And I remember he was a child. I was taking care of him. I mean, it was so ridiculous. Now I laugh at myself. I would never do that now. The things I put up with, but I was taking care of him.
Mhm.
And I laughed so hard, and I was like, "Wow, I write books on motherhood. I'm a caretaker. I work with clients all over the world, healing them. How could I compartmentalize that egoic identification of being a healer and a caretaker and not think it's gonna transfer over to every single relationship in my life?" And when it left my body, I felt it leaving my body, the spiritual transformational process. I lifted out. I was laughing like the Buddha. Like, I remember just laughing like, I created it.
Mhm.
I created the relationship, because every relationship is a mirror to get to know yourself better.
Yes.
And then you laugh at yourself. It's funny. Like, that's why the Buddha laughed when he saw how funny life is. It's like, we make it. We create the reality because it's in us from our subconscious programming from childhood of like, we had to take care of everybody, and then we get mad at the people we're around that need our care.
Yes, exactly, exactly. It
Mhm.
was that was the first piece, so that happened in December. Big shift happened for me in
Yeah.
December. December was when I went, "Hmm, little piece there." Then got the EMDR in January, bigger piece there
Mhm.
with the self-worth and the feeling like, I could be a significant, be feeling significant. Then while I was in halfway through EMDR, I looked at my husband. I had a scheduled a plant medicine, journey with my plant medicine therapist, and I said, "You gotta come with me." 'Cause I could feel in my heart that what we needed to do was heart work, that we needed to whether we were gonna stay together or separate, we still have children, we have businesses, we have a life together. We needed to get to a place where my heart wasn't broken, where his heart was open, so we went and did that, Chelsea. We went and
Mhm.
did this. Oh, 7 days later, we went and did this journey, and I told the therapist, I said, "I think the medicine that we need is MDMA," because what we had been through, I've never talked about. It's in my new book. It was such a, traumatic experience that we had gone through as a couple. We needed deep healing. Like, this was not, this wasn't, some silly little thing. It wasn't even like, "Oh, we had an affair with someone." No, it's like this was like it was a big deal, and we had some work to do, and we went in there and we set our intention. Okay, we he looked at me and he's like, "If we could just get to be friends again, I would be so happy." And I felt was like, "Yes, I'm so lonely in our relationship. Like,
Mhm.
I'm married and I'm lonely and it hurts my heart." Like, physically,
Mhm.
my heart was physically hurting. Like,
Mhm.
physically had chest pain. And it
The heart
was
opening process is very painful. Your heart's gonna open physically by a heart attack or something, or it will open spiritually, but
it
it's gonna open for everybody.
it
Yeah.
was so profound, but this medicine, like and the Reiki work. So first we went, she had us do these exercises, and then we laid down and I went into my body and started just talking, feeling my heart, how broken it was, how it felt so betrayed. My womb, my womb was like, I was like, I've been so betrayed. I'm so sad that this happened, I was just my talking to the organs of my body and processing exactly where these feelings were being held in my body, and then I went out, astral projected myself out to the edge of the universe, which is where I like to go when I get Reiki symbols.
Mhm.
And I picked up a Reiki symbol for us that was basically to interrupt old programming that no longer serves the cellular body, and so I
Mhm.
brought this symbol back, did my own Reiki clearing on my own body with it, and then came out of my, like, trance that I was in and looked at my husband and said, "Can I do this? I brought a symbol back. Can I do a clearing on you?" And I just started clearing all of his chakras, his whole body, and, and by the time I finished the bottom of his feet, I just started kissing his body. Although, because I just felt like the universe told me, "You are here to bear witness to one another." They're basically without judgment, without shame, without guilt, without all of these negative emotions, just witnessing each other. And it hasn't been the same since. There is something profoundly peaceful within our relationship. There's something peaceful within our dynamic. It was being able to fully lean into my feminine intuition, to do this work, to have
Mhm.
him trust me as the healer that
Yeah.
I believe all women are healers. I love that book. Who
Yeah.
is that? Diane Stein? Who is that? She wrote a
Oh, I
book.
wanna read it. I haven't read it.
Oh my god, I read it when I was in high school, and it's
Will you
literally
send
called
it to me?
All Women Are Healers. Yes, I'll send it to you. And she's
Okay.
so right, when we really go into ourselves deeply, we can deeply heal ourselves and our spouses. I really think that the work is for us to do, for us, for them.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I talk about for sure in these books,
Oh,
but,
it's
like
beautiful.
but also not to take on the role of caretaker. Sometimes there's
Yeah.
a line.
Yes.
It's not that he's a child.
No, it wasn't at all.
And that's the difference is you can't approach them like they're children,
Yes. I
and
did
they
that
shouldn't be
for
coming to
years.
acting like children.
No.
It's like, no, we're healing our generational wounds so that our orchard is
Yes.
healthy.
Yes. Yes,
so that our orchard
exactly.
is healthy.
Yeah, there's a big difference. Before, it was funny, like, earlier in our marriage, then there was a point in our marriage where I said, "You have to stop calling me mom, because 'cause I'm not your mom." And I laid down the law, like, at that point, he started calling me Amy, because I felt like it was becoming a dynamic of
Mom and dad,
me
yeah, and then
momming.
you start to play out but also then you start to play out what is mom? Because my current husband's mom is one of the most unhealthy humans I've ever met, and it's been and so, like, if he doesn't call me mom, interesting enough,
Good.
but I have called him dad
Yeah.
to the kids, like, or to my, dad this or that, but, like, I have a good relationship with my dad. It's like, realize the words what you're saying. I mean, now I do, like, he's dead, so that's good. But, like, it's fine now, and I healed it, right? But if I noticed he doesn't call me mom,
Yeah, and that's
and that's
good,
good because his
healthy.
mom's not so good,
Yeah, that's really
you
healthy.
know?
Yeah, I kind of realized, whoa, are we playing into this weird dynamic of him reliving his relationship with his mother in this power struggle with his mother? I don't
Oh,
want a
yeah,
teenage
and
husband who's having a power struggle with his mother. I'm not your mother, and you're not a teenager. You're a grown man. And
uh-huh.
let's get out of this. Sometimes it's the neurolinguistics, it's the words we choose. Sometimes will throw us into these power struggles. And I was like, oh,
Mhm,
I'm not comfortable with that.
mhm.
But give me one last thing. For the women who are listening who feel disconnected, overwhelmed, or they're searching for alignment, where would you invite them to begin?
Take space. It's the number one thing you have to do. So, like, if reality is shared and reality is based only on the truth that you understand. And truth is based off of what somebody, if two people are in the room and they believe the same thing, then that's truth. But it's all really just a lie. So, the only way, if you're with your family unit and you've never separated from the family unit and you live on an island, so everyone lives on an island and their friends are on an island and leave your island, whether that's your work culture or your and go to other people's islands. And it's people that contrast you and have different belief systems and there's different ways of thinking and listen to them and don't fight them. And so you could be wearing red glasses and you could be in a wheelchair and you can be functional in your wheelchair with your conditioning, right? We are all like, just imagine we're all based on society. We're women, we're in wheelchairs right now. We really don't understand the full power of our heart. And if you really recognize what I'm saying right now, it's very sad. So culture, society has programmed us that two incomes are better than one, and as a result of that, we have ruined our family structure. And so for you to understand that there's another way of being, you have to take space from the reality and the islands that you have created. And if that's you need a s if you're someone's listening right now that's like, "I needed a break from work," and a lot of women are trying to figure out how to take a break from work, take a freaking break from work. You don't need permission from anybody. Take a break, take space in your day. Maybe it's like, every day I'm gonna take an hour, then it becomes 2 hours, and maybe you wake up earlier, and then it becomes every month I do something for myself, and it's based on creativity, it's based on space, based on meeting new people, and you begin to cultivate a relationship with yourself in that space. And then the second thing I would recommend is, redefining what success is. And so success is number 1, it has to be based on your nature. And it has to be something that you can actually get. And so a lot of women base success off a dangling carrot of something that they really can't have. I mean, a lot of times let's give infertility as a problem. Like, I'm not going to be successful until I have a baby, right? I hate to say that it's a really intense one. That's the biggest wound there is, right? Or I'm not successful until I get that job, or I'm not as successful until I get that bigger house. Success is based off of what being who you are within your own nature and being able to actually get that and then not wanting something outside of your means. And so if you can look at those 2 things and then I mean, that's where I would begin, space and redefining what success is. And both of these books, The Feminine Effect, Discovering Your True Nature, The Feminine Frequency, which comes out March 10th. It's available on Amazon. The Audible of The Feminine Effect will be out like in the next week or so. All my other books, Mystical Motherhood, Fertile, The Alchemy of Becoming, are available on my website. The Chelsea Ann Effect. And I can work with people now. I work as a practitioner, but like if somebody wants to, I cut it off for a while, but like if somebody needs like an hour, I don't even, it's not even about money. It's just, People need help,
They really
need
do.
guidance, but these books are really easy. They take you right there. It's like I hold your hand, I'm like, "Come on."
Chelsea, you are amazing. Thank you for bringing such a layered and thought-provoking conversation to the manager
Yeah,
today. I
anytime.
I was like, I appreciate today's discussion. It's like gonna invite women to slow down and ask deeper questions about their identity and energy and
Mhm.
motherhood and what it means to live in alignment with ourselves instead of trying to keep up with other people's expectations of what we're supposed to be doing. So, to everybody who's listening, whether you fully agree, feel curious, or are still exploring your own perspective, this is what the manager is about, expanding conversations around women's leadership, the experience of being a woman, and evolution. Chelsea, I'm so excited. Love that. If you're interested in Chelsea's work, please connect with her on our website or go buy one of her books on Amazon or wherever books are offered. And to our community, if today's conversation spoke to you, share this episode with a woman in your life who is navigating her own path back to herself. Until next time, keep managing your life, your energy, and your leadership. Bye, girls. See you next week.